Welcome to this elite training masterclass on systemic surface restoration. Listen, today we are not just talking about grabbing a mop and cleaning up. We are going deep into the advanced professional methodologies, the precise execution strategies, and the high-level preservation frameworks you absolutely need to manage and restore commercial and historic flooring. Whether you're an architect, a facility manager, or a dedicated restoration specialist, this session is going to equip you with the insider intelligence required to transform deteriorating, neglected surfaces into high-performance assets. Okay, let's dive right in.
Now, before we even think about firing up the heavy machinery and executing technical mechanics, we really have to understand the asset itself. The Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings, or SPAB, lays down this profound philosophical foundation for our work. They remind us that the grooves, the imperfections, those subtle wear patterns, those are literally the ghosts of time. It's a great reminder that true mastery in restoration demands immense respect for the material you're working with. Because let's face it, you cannot successfully restore what you don't understand. The physical floor is a historical record, and our fundamental duty here is preservation, not erasure.
All right, to get us there, our curriculum today is going to progress logically through 6 core modules. 1. The philosophy of restoration. 2. Site diagnosis and preparation. 3. The mechanics of sanding. 4. Advanced polishing and honing. 5. Professional coatings and finishes, and finally, Module 6, troubleshooting and system maintenance.
Let's start right at the foundation. Module 1, the philosophy of restoration and truly understanding the asset.
We actively need to contrast traditional, thoughtful preservation against the aggressive, just rip it out and replace it mentality that completely dominates the industry today. Unwitting obliteration of ancient fabric happens in an instant when professionals fail to just pause and assess materials. Think about intricate historic floor tiles or complex, deeply patterned marble. If a contractor approaches surfaces like those with a heavy-handed, modern grinding protocol, the inherent story and structural integrity of that floor are destroyed forever. Our diagnostic eye has to recognize this value well before a single machine is turned on.
So what is our guiding framework here? It's the principle of minimal intervention. The SPAB directs us that sometimes the do-nothing option is actually the most pragmatic and effective long-term strategy. Honestly, our operational priorities should really just be removing surface soiling before it gets heavily impacted and dynamically controlling moisture. We have to actively avoid throwing aggressive chemicals and modern synthetic seals onto historic floors. Why? Because those heavy interventions strip the floor's ability to breathe naturally, which actually accelerates structural decay.
Which leads us perfectly into Module 2, Site Diagnosis and Preparation, getting our assessment and safety protocols dialed in. Before any mechanical work begins, rigorous site diagnosis is absolutely non-negotiable. Skipping this phase is exactly where systemic failures start. A perfect example of a massive diagnostic failure is blindly inserting a damp-proof membrane, or DPM, into a traditional build. Now, while a DPM is standard practice in new construction, retrofitting one under an old, breathable floor traps moisture. And since that moisture can no longer evaporate up across the floor's surface, where does it go? It gets displaced outward, straight to the base of your walls. This can cause totally irreversible rising damp in ancient masonry that was previously bone dry. You absolutely must allow traditional builds to breathe.
Beyond diagnosing the structure, we've got to implement actionable, strict safety directives. The NWFA Job Site Safety Checklist is a great framework. First off, always test for lead and finishes applied prior to 1978. Second, and please pay attention, because this is a severe real-world risk. Sanding dust is highly flammable. Spontaneous combustion is a genuine, terrifying operational danger. Never leave dust bags in your machine or in your vehicle overnight. Empty them when they are just half full. Finally, verify the proper ambient moisture content before you make even a single sanding pass.
Let's move on to Module 3, the mechanics of sanding, where we break down the technical execution. Shifting our focus over to strict mechanical execution, professional success requires a highly calculated workflow. Following the NWFA sanding guidelines, your very first step is to measure the remaining wear layer thickness across multiple areas of the floor. You have to know what you're working with. And here is a cardinal rule of timber restoration for you. Never, and I mean absolutely never, under any circumstances, sand a cupped floor until you have definitively proven that the moisture content of the wood and the subfloor has fully stabilized. All right, jumping into Module 4, Advanced Polishing and Honing. Let's talk about achieving those flawless, high-gloss results.
In this module, we're focusing on the progressive use of high-speed equipment, advanced abrasive sequencing, and really, the mechanical science behind high-gloss finishes. You absolutely must understand the distinct operational differences between buffing and burnishing. Buffing operates at lower RPMs and is incredibly labor-intensive. To put it in perspective, it takes roughly 25 hours to buff 10,000 square feet. Burnishing, on the other hand, utilizes ultra-high speeds. We're talking 1,500 to 2,500 RPM to literally sand down the microscopic peaks of the floor. It takes just 4.5 hours for that exact same footprint and produces a deep, wet gloss. But a quick warning here. Burnishing requires sufficient coats of finish to act as a sacrificial layer. Without that, you're going to rapidly wear down the floor itself.
So let's see how this builds into a specific system, like a terrazzo restoration sequence. This is a progressive refinement process using resin diamond polishing pads. You begin by honing at 400 grit, step it up to 800 grit to build a nice satin sheen, then transition to polishing at 1500 grit for a high gloss, before finalizing at 3000 grit for ultimate mirror-like clarity. The strict rule here: never skip your diamond grid stages. Attempting to shortcut this sequence guarantees you'll end up with a cloudy, subpar finish every single time.
Next up, Module 5, Professional Coatings and Finishes. It's time for chemical protection.
Transitioning away from mechanical grinding and into chemical protection, professional specification starts with knowing your materials inside and out. For instance, traditional floor waxes, formulated from beeswax and turpentine, are actually extraordinary. Why? Because they retain their flexibility over decades while safely allowing old floors to evaporate moisture. Now, while a modern synthetic polish might seem super appealing for a quick, easy shine, applying it to a historic floor can seal the surface far too tightly. That traps moisture and rapidly accelerates the decay of the substrate.
But what about modern heavy-duty applications? Well, we need to break down this complex chemical decision into a clear framework. When you're specifying between, say, polyaspartic and polyurethane, you have to look at the operational requirements of the facility. Do you need a rapid return to service in a matter of hours plus high UV resistance? Then you specify polyaspartic. But what if you're dealing with a concrete slab that's prone to big temperature fluctuations and demands high flexibility? In that case, polyurethane is going to be the superior and, honestly, more economical choice. Your specifications simply must match the facility's exact environmental demands.
Finally, Module 6, Troubleshooting and System Maintenance for Long-Term Preservation.
Look, executing a flawless restoration is really only half the battle. Preservation requires continuous quality control. Let's examine a real-world case study that plagues facilities all the time. Why are my newly restored timber floors turning cloudy? Imagine executing a massive, expensive restoration, only to walk in the next morning and see milky patches in the light, pale streaks along the board edges, and dull mop lines. It is incredibly frustrating. And guess what? It is almost always a symptom of systemic maintenance failure. This could be using the wrong chemical cleaners, excessive moisture during mopping, or just a fundamental incompatibility between the finish you applied and the cleaning protocol the janitorial staff is using. The ultimate solution framework here relies entirely on strategic facility maintenance. A brilliant, mirror-like floor is never accidental, folks. It requires a profound, technical understanding of the specific floor material. It demands using the correct restorative equipment, but most importantly, it relies on implementing a highly disciplined preventive maintenance schedule and establishing continuous quality control. Exceptional results are generated by highly trained personnel executing strategic systems. Full stop. We're going to conclude today by really elevating the mindset of our profession. A well-maintained floor is not merely a surface that people walk on. It is a visible, undeniable reflection of the standards, the discipline, and the professional excellence of the facilities management team. When you apply the frameworks we've discussed today with consistency, you literally transform a deteriorating surface into a premium asset.
So, I want to leave you with this final high-impact thought as we close out today's masterclass. The next time you walk through your building, look down at the surfaces you manage and ask yourself, are your facility's floors reflecting a legacy of rigorous professional excellence, or are they merely revealing years of systematic neglect? It is completely up to you to implement these methodologies and raise the standard. Thank you so much for joining this elite training session.